All right, UFC 310 goes down next weekend, the final pay-per-view of the year, and they always like to go out with a bang. 2024 has been an incredible year. We've seen some new fighters come along and take over the sport. Alex Pereira is the belle of the ball. John Jones is still the pound-for-pound number one. Ilia Topuria might go on to be one of the greatest fighters that the sport has ever seen. And once again, it's been an incredible year of knockout action. And the final pay-per-view of the year, UFC 310, will once again deliver an incredible night of action. Now, in the main event, we have a new guy coming in, fighting for the belt in his UFC debut. His name is Kai Asakura, a man that has fought his entirety of his career out in Japan. He was a rising champion. He's a knockout artist. He's got bone-breaking, jaw-shattering power. He's a great striker, and he's a good wrestler as well. He's taking on Alejandro Pantoja. Now, there's some storylines in every single one of these fights. So I'm going to go through every fight on the main card. I'm going to give you some of my early thoughts and some of the storylines or narratives surrounding every single one of these. So, as I said, main event, Kai Asakura. Who is this guy? Well, Japanese fighter coming out of Tokyo. 21 wins, 4 losses, 13 knockouts, 3 submissions, and as I said, he was a rising champion. Last time he was in action, Japan, New Year's Eve at the Saitama Arena in Tokyo, Japan. The scene of many amazing fights back in the Pride days. But the big difference between Pride and the UFC is that they are competed in a ring. And the reason why this is going to be interesting is because has he adapted his style to the UFC? Has he been training in a cage? In his fights, for example, his last one against Juan Archuleta was trying to take him down. Up against the ring, under the ropes, he was sprawling, and his legs, if these are the ropes, his legs were all the way past. They were right past the end of the ropes on the apron. The apron of the ring's about 2 foot long, maybe even longer, and his legs were all the way out past there. Obviously, in a cage, you can't do that. So if you're pushed up against it, your feet are perpendicular to your body, and that makes it easier for somebody like Alejandro Pantoja to get a hold of a leg, a single leg, a double, a high crotch, whatever the case may be, and take you down, okay? It is an entirely different world. Fighting in a ring, fighting in a cage. Of course, he's going to do his homework. He knows that Pantoja, his best bet is to take him down. Pantoja can compete on the feet. Of course he can. This man is very talented in every area of mixed martial arts, but it's the takedown ability that he has. And of course, the jiu-jitsu, once it hits the floor, that's going to be the real problem. Now, that fight that Asakura had with Juan Archuleta, that ended because a beautiful knee right into the solar plexus, dropped Juan Archuleta, and it was done. It was a devastating blow. So, of course, getting a hold of him isn't going to be easy. And last time we saw Pantoja, he had a tough outing with Steve Erceg, a man that shot to fame and rose through the rankings in record time, okay? But Kai Asakura, this is a man that is extremely explosive. He's a lifelong martial artist, bone-breaking power, as I said. But if he can't stop the takedown, then I tell you what, it's going to be another fighter coming over from Japan and not making the transition. Remember when the UFC bought out Pride? A lot of fighters came over. Some of them did well, some of them did okay, some of them did terribly. People like Mauricio Shogun Rua came over, who was a Pride middleweight Grand Prix champion. He was defeated and choked out by Forrest Griffin. Now, yes, sure enough, he went on to become the champion, the light heavyweight champion of the world, when he knocked out Lyoto Machida. But he lost to Forrest Griffin. No shame in that, by the way. But what I'm saying is it takes time for them to adapt their styles. People like Mirko Krokop had a good run in the UFC, but certainly wasn't as successful as what he was in Pride. And the list goes on. The Nogueira brothers. Again, I am not saying anything bad about these fighters. A lot of them went on to become champions. So, of course, you know, they got there eventually. But there was a couple of stumbling blocks along the way. And will Kai Asakura be another one that stumbles in his first attempt? Before that also, Shavkat Rakhmonov going up against Ian Machado Garry. I've said this before, you got to have a lot of respect for Ian Garry. He didn't have to take this fight, but can he stop the takedown? Seems like all I'm talking about here is takedowns. Shavkat Rakhmonov, he's very tall for the division, as is Ian Garry. They're both 6'3", and they're both competent strikers. Ian Garry's probably, though, going to dance around the octagon and use the exact same game plan what he did against Jeff Neal. He's got to keep Shavkat Rakhmonov off him, okay? If he can't stop the takedown, he will get finished. And that is no disrespect to Ian Garry. He might be able to dance around, use the reach, use the range, use the movement, be fast, be elusive, be nice and crisp, be light on his toes, and be dedicated enough to not allow himself to get involved into a brawl. If he does that, Shavkat's going to get a hold of him. If he gets a hold of him, he's going to get him down. And if he gets him down, it's going to be lights out. Look at Shavkat's last fight, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, a man that spent his entire life stopping takedowns, okay? But what did Shavkat do? Boxed his way into a clinch and then slowly but surely, methodically worked his way down. So the story in that fight is simple. Can Ian Garry stop the takedown? Because if he can't, someone's always going to go, and that's probably going to be Ian Garry's. But he does have a path to victory of using the range, sticking and moving. The crowd will boo, but who cares about the crowd? Winning is all that matters. Moving on, Ciryl Gane versus Alexander Volkov. Now, this is a rematch. The first fight was over 5 rounds. This fight is over 3 rounds. The storyline right here is Ciryl Gane cannot afford to waste a single round. When he fought Volkov the first time, he lost the first 2 rounds. Fortunately, was able to fight his way back into it. He didn't lose it badly, but he was outstruck on the scorecards, okay? Volkov landed more shots. Yeah, granted, they weren't earth-shattering blows. They were just lots of little inside, outside kicks, jabs, right hands. Nothing devastating, but it had him ahead on the scorecards over the first 2 rounds. Gane took over in rounds 3, 4, and 5 and was able to win a decision. But in a 3-round affair, you haven't got the time to do that. In a 3-round affair, you don't want to go down 1 round, let alone 2 rounds. You go around 2 rounds, you have to get a stoppage, as we all know. But Ciryl Gane, having been away from the sport a little bit, the last time that he fought was September 2023. He's got to come back. He's got to prove that he's still one of the best, that he wants to be a champion, that he wants to go up against the winner of John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. And he's probably hoping that Tom Aspinall beats John Jones, because apparently now conversations have already started. My guess will be that fight goes down International Fight Week 2025, Las Vegas, Nevada. And he wants Tom Aspinall to win, because if he can get through Alexander Volkov, he might get his hands on England's own Tom Aspinall. But Volkov is on a 4-fight win streak, stopping Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Alexander Romanov, Tai Tuivasa, and beating Sergey Pavlovich via decision. So the man's on a tear. He's improving all the time. So it's not an easy fight for Ciryl Gane to come back with. Yes, he's beaten him before, but he beat him by decision. And as I just described, the pressure is kind of on in this fight. He needs to win this fight to remain considered as one of the best heavyweights in the division. Moving on, Bryce Mitchell versus Kron Gracie. What's the storyline here? Very simple. We're going to see Kron Gracie on the ground, something that we haven't really seen yet.
Yes. I see that you know your judo well.
Of course, he's lost his last 2 fights. That was to Charles Jourdain, and before that, Cub Swanson. 2 very dynamic strikers. When he made his UFC debut, he took on Alex Caceres. He was able to take him down. He got the rear naked choke in the first round. But against Cub Swanson and Charles Jourdain, they were faster, they were slicker, they understood the range, they were able to stop the takedown, and they were able to piece him up on the feet. Well, Bryce Mitchell's returning almost 1 year since we saw him against Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett knocked him out. It was a terrible knockout, it really was. I am glad for Bryce Mitchell that he's taken a year away. Now, there's no shame. Josh Emmett's one of the hardest hitting featherweights that the sport has ever seen, okay? He got clipped in the first round, it put him to sleep. Before that, he beat Brannigan, and before that, he got choked out over Ilia Topuria. They're the only losses on the record of Bryce Mitchell. He's got a record of 16-2. Prior to that loss to Ilia Topuria, he was on a 15-fight win streak. Undefeated, beating Edson Barboza, Andre Fili, Charles Rosa, Matt Sales, doing great things, runs into Ilia Topuria, loses the fight fair and square, rebounds against Dan Ige, and then gets clipped against Josh Emmett. How does he win fights? Well, he's a good little boxer, but he likes to use his wrestling. He likes to take people down, and Kron Gracie will welcome that all day. Kron Gracie is kind of like the Gracie's last chance at getting some respect inside the UFC's octagon. Of course, they kind of invented the sport. Yes, it was originally called Vale Tudo, and fighting has been around as long as man has been here, okay? We've always loved a good fight, and now it's been turned into the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and they put forward Royce Gracie as their representative. Right now, that man's name is Kron Gracie. Does a lot of pressure on this man's shoulder. The Gracie name is famous worldwide, okay? And they are an institution. They are a business. They are making millions and millions of dollars in schools all over the world. Kron Gracie has a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and Bryce Mitchell is going to play the game. He's going to take him down, and we are in for a treat. And before that, opening up the main card, we've got the one and only Nate the Train Landwehr taking on the Korean Superboy, a man that has thrilled audiences. And before that, let me tell you, we have the best prelims that any fight card has ever had. This is the first fight of the night. Clay Guida versus Chase Hooper. Then it's Michael Chiesa versus Max Griffin. Cody Durden versus Joshua Van. Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. We all know Chris Weidman, former champion, snapped his leg, was meant to fight at Madison Square Garden. Well, now he's coming back against Eric Anders. Randy Brown taking on Brian Battle, a man that just thrilled audiences in Paris. Randy Brown's also doing big things as well. Shout out to Rude Boy. Movsar Evloev, 18-0, undefeated, going up against a former champion, Aljamain Sterling. Again, this is the prelims, by the way. And then the prelim headliner is my mate, Anthony Smith, going up against Dominic Reyes, the man that fought John Jones for the light heavyweight title. As I said, some of the best prelims, or probably the best prelims that a fight card has ever had. But there are my storylines and my early thoughts coming into UFC 310. What do you think about that? Who do you think wins the main event? Who do you think wins all of these fights? Thank you for watching. Subscribe and ring the bell. I will see you soon.